Okay, so the recording has started. I'm going to hand over to the chair of the licensing subcommittee, Councillor Nick Da Costa.
Thank you very much, Naz, for that. Before we kick off, let's get some introductions done. First, my name is Councillor Nick Da Costa, Chair of Licensing and Chair of this Licensing Subcommittee and a member for Highgate. I will turn first to the members of the Licensing Subcommittee. Councillor Bell.
Hi there, I'm Councillor Eva Bell, member of this Licensing Subcommittee and member for Highgate.
Thank you. Councillor Amin.
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Kaushika Amin. I'm the Labour member for Northumberland Park Ward.
Thank you. And now turning to the legal officer, Robin.
Finally got my microphone unmuted. Robin Levitt, Principal Project Lawyer Litigation, currently advising this licensing subcommittee.
Thank you very much. And then the licensing officer, Ms. Barrett.
Good evening, I'm Dale Barrett, licensing team leader.
Thank you very much. And the committee clerk.
Yeah, I'm Nazia Chowdhury, Democratic Services and clerk to the subcommittee.
Excellent. Can I check if the applicants are here? I've got Ilian Yanef and Laura Crouch.
Hi, Chair. I will be presenting on behalf of this licence. It's Laura Crouch, Head of Active Wellbeing.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to confirm that Ilian Yanef is not presenting.
Correct. I have got Tundi Williams on the call, who is our area manager for Active Wellbeing.
Okay.
Hi, good evening all.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Just updating my speakers list. So we've got a number of objectors on the call. I've had some confirmed names of speakers in opposition to the application. I will take the names that I've had confirmed in advance first. If you could confirm if you're still wanting to speak on the application. So I have first Kate Stewart.
Yes, I will be speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I've got Liz Edmonds.
Yeah, I will be speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I've got Robert Goat.
Yes, I will be speaking. Thank you.
Excellent. Then I've got Councillor Lucia Das Neves.
Yes, I will be speaking.
Excellent. Then I've got Dave Smith.
I don't think Dave's joining.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will update that on my list. If I do call him later on by mistake, I apologise in advance, but I will cross him out from my list. And then I've got Robin Alcott.
Yes, I will be speaking. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Can I ask, are there any other objectors who are wanting to speak at this hearing? If you would like to speak, could you please raise your virtual hand and then I can take down names in order that I see the hands. I've got someone called Mark G. Mark, can I get your surname, please?
Hi, Garner.
Sorry, apologies. It was Garner.
I'll pop it in the chat.
Okay. No, we cannot use the chat for this hearing. I'll come on to that in a bit.
Okay.
But just to check, there was Mark Garner.
Yeah, Garner, as in Jennifer Garner, James Garner, or Alan Garner, depending on your preference.
Okay. No worries. Can I just check with the clerk that was a logged objection?
Yes, I can confirm he is a speaker. Yes, he is a.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okie dokie. Fantastic. So hopefully we can stick with those speakers. Laura, sorry, apologies. I see your hand is up.
Sorry, I didn't mention, and I should have done. We've also got Craig Bellringer here from the Noise and Nuisance team for our reference if needed.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. I understand that Mr. Crouch would like to name Mr. Bellringer as witness to something, so she may wish to confirm that.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Craig's been invited as a witness as he supported with the noise review as part of a licensing request, and there were queries over what that process was.
Okay. Excellent. And then, sorry, and apologies everyone. I just want to make sure I've got my speakers notes pulled up correctly so that I'm not missing out anyone from the speakers list. Sarah, I see you have. Oh, apologies.
I'm not very well equipped at Microsoft, but I wouldn't mind saying a few words. I'm a witness to the noise, and I live in the area.
So that was Mary Connolly, yes?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, and I can see Sarah Gornall. You have your hand up.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I assume that means you want to speak.
I would like to say something if it hasn't been said already. Yeah.
Okay, so what I've got at the moment, I'm going to be calling you last, as I've taken hands in order that they came up. So hopefully the thing has been said before you, but if not, then I'll come to you last of the speakers. I hope that's all right with you. Okay.
Sorry, Chair,
So
I can't. Sorry, Chair, I don't know if the licensing officer may wish to confirm. I can't find Miss Gornell's name on the list.
Sorry, on which list?
So the list of objectors who submitted objections in advance of the hearing.
Both I and my husband wrote individual emails. We've had replies from various
people. Thank you, Chair. I can confirm Miss Gornall is.
Okay, excellent.
Has made.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, with that bit out of the way, we've got the list organised now. So we move on to filming at meetings. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available for public viewing. Next item, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence, Clerk?
There are no apologies for absence. All members are present.
Thank you very much. And any items of urgent business?
Hang on a moment. Yeah, as it is a special meeting of the subcommittee under Part 4, Section B, Paragraph 17 of the Council's Constitution, no other business shall be considered at the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Do members have any declarations of interest?
No declaration from me.
Thank you very much.
No declarations from me either.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move on to the summary of the procedure. This is for all attendees. The procedure for the meeting has been emailed to all participants by the clerk. For the purpose of any members of the public watching, for the application, we will first hear from the licensing officer. After that, the applicant will present their case. The objectors and subcommittee will have the opportunity to ask questions. Then the objectors will present their representation and the subcommittee and applicant will have the opportunity to ask questions. All parties will then have the opportunity to sum up, and then the meeting will conclude to allow the subcommittee to deliberate and reach a decision. The decision will be then provided in writing within 5 working days of this meeting. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand, your virtual hand, and direct all communication via the chair. We will take all papers as read, unless there is anything specific you wish to draw our attention to. All speakers will be allocated 5 minutes to speak. When speaking, please be succinct and do not exceed the allocated time, unless you request for an extension of time, which is at the discretion of the chair. This is quite an important point, as we also have a lot of residents attending. Please do not share addresses of speakers. You can say that you live in vicinity of the premises or you live on X road, but please don't provide house numbers or your exact address or postcodes, please. In the event that there be several speakers for each party, please avoid repetition and perhaps consider having a spokesperson to address all concerns. When speaking, please keep your camera on. If you're not speaking, please can you ensure that you are muted. Please note that the chat is not to be used for this hearing, as it does not form part of the public meeting, so please do not use the chat function in Teams. Okay, with that in mind, let's move on to hear the application itself. This is an application for a new premises license under the Licensing Act 2003, New River Sports and Fitness, main site, White Hart Lane, Wood Green, London N22 5QW. Miss Barrett, could you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Chair. As you pointed out, it is an application for a new premises licence for the New River Sports Centre, which sits in the Woodside ward. Before I get underway, can I just make clear that the subcommittee is advised that whilst the application has been submitted by the council, acting through its leisure services function, it must be treated in the same manner as any other application made under the Licensing Act 2003. In this context, the council is acting in its capacity as an applicant and is therefore subject to the same legal requirements, including the need to demonstrate how the licensing objectives will be promoted. This role is entirely distinct from the council as the licensing authority, which has a statutory duty to determine the application impartially and in accordance with the Act, the Section 182 guidance and the council's statement of licensing policy. Okay. Further clarification, please, in that whilst the application is for the sports centre, the Licensing Act itself does not cover what takes place in terms of business as usual matters at the centre. So the centre being used for sports days, track and field events, that sort of thing. So any conditions that are, if they are to, if say the licence was to be granted, they wouldn't be applying to those kind of activities taking place at the centre at all. This is strictly just for licensed activities taking place at the centre. The caveat to that being indoor sporting events are deemed to indoor sporting events in the presence of an audience are deemed to be or to constitute regulated entertainment, and so do fall under the Licensing Act 2003. And this could be something like a boxing or wrestling entertainment in view of an audience that would then be caught by licensing provisions. Okay. So in terms of the application itself, the application is submitted by Mr. Crichtley on behalf of London Borough of Haringey Leisure Services and can be found at Appendix A. That's on page 17. The application seeks a new premises license authorising, licensed activities for live music indoors and outdoors, and also the main stadium pitch, which is shown as location 1 on the plan, I believe on page 65, you can see that plan. So live music Fridays at 7 p.m. until 10 p.m, Saturdays 5 p.m. until 9 p.m, and Sundays 4 p.m. till 8 p.m. Recorded music, again, both indoors and outdoors, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m, Saturday 9 a.m. to 9 p.m, and Sunday 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Can I please point out that yes, it does, late night refreshment has been ticked, but that is not caught for this application at all, so can be disregarded. Late night refreshment only kicks in between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. lawfully. The supply of alcohol for consumption on the premises, that's been requested Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m, Saturday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m, and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. They've also included in this application to cover the first floor of a tenanted building on site, which is currently occupied by the Scholars Rugby Club. The Scholars Rugby Club itself has an existing license, but it is a club premises certificate, which is different to the standard premises license that New River now seeks to also include that space within this license. The proposed designated premises supervisor is Mr. Yanev, and the application indicates that the premises is open all year round, save for a closure over the Christmas to New Year period. The applicant has stated an intention to hold no more than 5 events per year for a capacity of up to 2,000 people for external hires or organisations at which regulated entertainment may take place in the area located on the main pitch. At 1.7, I've inserted there that the police, having regard to the application, has reduced the hours requested by half an hour. This is to allow for drinking up time. So you have at section 1.7, the times showing the half an hour taken away by the police. At 1.8 of the report, I have inserted information around the deregulation of regulated entertainment. So should the license be granted, the committee should note that not all forms of regulated entertainment proposed within this application will require authorization under the Act. So in effect, due to the deregulation of regulated entertainment only, this does not involve alcohol at all, just regulated entertainment we're talking about. Entertainment provided by or on behalf of the local authority at its own premises may be exempt for the requirement for a license between the hours of 8 AM and 11 PM without a specified audience limit. In this regard. And in the same way, if New River were to hire out the venue, the same deregulation would apply. So the provision of live music, recorded music and similar entertainments between 9 AM and 11 PM, or in this case it would be 2200, their earlier closing time, for audiences of up to 500 persons would fall within the deregulated entertainment provision and would not be covered under would not need to be mentioned on the license, and therefore would not be, for instance, regulated and it would not be subject to any conditions, therefore, under this license. The large-scale events, this is events of up to 2,000 per day, 2,000 persons, on 5 days per year would be subject to the conditions should the license be granted. The application itself was submitted on the 5th of May 2026 and went through the 28-day consultation period where relevant representations were made, and you have in the pack the representation from the Met Police at page 73, which has been agreed by the applicant. You have the Noise Authority representation on page 80, which has also been agreed by the applicant. There was a subsequent follow-up from the noise officer asking the centre to consider putting in place a noise management plan, which they have subsequently now carried out, and that noise management plan you have, I believe, in the second additional appendix. From page 85 of the initial pack, you have got the various email representations from the 2 ward councillors and the residents attached to this report. So I have set out there at section 114 some of the matters raised by the representation submitted. So we have the prevention of public nuisance. It speaks about amplified music and bass noise from existing events, concerns that permanent license may permit frequent or potentially unlimited events and so forth. There was reference to planning permission in the representations, reported noise officer intervention in connection to previous events in 2025. Under public safety, speak about congestion on the streets and car parking issues. Under the prevention of crime and disorder, it speaks about existing security difficulties at the site and a temporary fence. Concerns about insufficient details on stewarding and crowd management. And under the protection of children from harm, the premises is near to secondary schools and so forth. Other matters raised in the representations that are not in scope for this committee is the ecology and environmental aspects, procedural and engagement concerns that local councils and residents were not engaged with prior to the application, and that concerns around the timing of the public notice relative to the May 2026 local elections. One representation also requested the review of the existing license. I have put in there a little bit of a background around the request for the existing license at 116, because it is not relevant. There is a separate process if somebody wants to review a license, and that is available on the website should they wish to take that route. At section 2, you have there for the panel the key policy considerations and legal considerations. That is being highlighted around the new information that's in the section 182 guidance, that hearsay evidence can be heard at this hearing, and sorry, the revised guidance now in the 182 guidance is advising local authorities, that when making licensing decisions, all licensing authorities should consider the need to promote growth and deliver economic benefits in the area. I've also included the National Licensing Policy Framework. And at section 3, we've got the various sections from the licensing policy for members to be mindful of when making deliberations. There is clarification on the planning and licensing interactions at 3.3. So whilst planning has been mentioned, this committee is not able to consider the planning permission in place, and is not held by the planning permission in place either. They are separate regimes, and planning, if there are any concerns relating to planning, then the planning department will need to follow up and deal with those. The clarification on elections and licensing administration, that at section 3.4, just to make clear that there are no issues with regards to Licensing Act and Gambling Act matters. They are not impacted by the fact that there are elections underway in any capacity. The law still requires that these applications are administered, and if hearings are required, that hearings are still required to take place for decisions to be handed out. In terms of background, at section 4, New River is a council-operated leisure site. It sits in 40 acres. There is a seated 1,000 spectator seating on the outside. And just by way of information, the venue does hold a current premises license, and that the hours for that premises license are shown at 4.2. There is a copy of that premises license on page 387 of the pack. For members to note, there was also a previous license held from 2006 for the New River Sports Centre, which covered only the internal building areas alone. At 4.3, I have shown there the complaints history. So 13 complaints related to the premises since 2022 to present time. The new application has an event management plan and seeks a maximum event capacity of up to 2,000 persons, and describes a hire model under which the premises license holder retains overall legal responsibility, while event organisers, hirers assume responsibility for event-specific operational delivery. At section 5 of the report, there are the recommendations to the licensing committee, obviously taken into consideration the 4 licensing objectives, which is at the heart of the decision making, and the committee may decide to grant the application as requested, grant the application whilst imposing additional conditions or altering it in any way, exclude any license for activities, or reject the whole or part of the application, but must, as always, provide clear reasons. Chair, before I finish off, I'll draw the panel's attention to the additional documents, please. So within this main document at page 403, there is the mediation letter that was sent to all residents. The mediation letter came from the centre and was shared to all residents that had made valid representation. As a result of that, in fact, one resident did in fact write in to withdraw their representation based on that. We have also, I have drawn together the list of conditions on page 409 of the pack. So that's an amalgamation of what the applicant put in the operating schedule, what the police put forward in their representation, and what the noise team have put forward in their representation on that page hopefully as a useful guide. And in addition, you've got pack 1 of the additional documents. Page 1 to 7 are supporting documents from the residents. Page 9 to 14 contains the noise management plan submitted by the centre. And pages 15 to 65 contain further supporting documents from residents. In the additional papers, pack 2, page 1 is a supporting document from New River. This was, I believe, in line with the follow-up footage that was sent in from New River. And you also have from page 2 to 24 further some supporting documents from the residents, which they are able to rely on, Chair. And Chair, just in finishing, as the committee knows, you have got the consideration of Section 17 of the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, and the Human Rights Act also comes into play here for these hearings, Chair. And there I can end, Chair, if you have any queries for me.
Is there anything about change of status?
Sorry, Ms. Connolly?
Sorry.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, Chair, you're on mute.
Apologies, my mute button, I kept on muting myself rather than unmuting myself. So apologies for that. Thank you for that, Miss Barrett. In the first instance, I will take questions for Miss Barrett from members of the subcommittee. Can I ask Councillor Bell, do you have any questions for Miss Barrett?
No,
questions, thank you. Councillor Amin, any questions for Miss Barrett?
I think no, I don't think so. I think Miss Barrett clarified the issues that I was kind of interested in, which is about the additional permissions that the premises license will provide, which are not available, but she's explained it very well already. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Miss Crouch, the applicant, do you have any questions for Miss Barrett?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And then questions from the objectors. I heard Miss Connolly had a question. Miss Connolly?
Yes, I mean, this is a leisure centre, so I was wondering legally if it can change its status to make it a sort of more of an entertainment centre with a license up to 2,000 people. I mean, I'm very concerned about the noise, but I was just wondering about that.
Sorry, that's really
the status of this is a leisure centre.
Yes, Miss
And
Connolly.
it's a sports centre. And
Miss Connolly?
Miss Connolly, Miss Barrett's trying to respond.
Centre, your question is really a planning matter, not a matter that's before the licensing subcommittee this evening.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Miss Connolly. Thank you, Miss Barrett. Any other questions for Miss Barrett before we move on to the applicant? No, okay. Excellent, thank you very much. So we will now hear from the applicant, Laura Crouch. You have 5 minutes, Miss Crouch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members and our community who have come to us this evening. So I'm presenting this application on behalf of New River Sports and Fitness. We are, the purpose of the application is not to transform the centre into a commercial music venue or a festival site. Rather, it's to provide a controlled and properly regulated space that allows the centre to continue to support community events and hold the licence ourselves rather than external providers of larger events applying for their own licences. We'll still continue to run sporting activities and all business as usual. There is no proposition to change our day-to-day operations. We're just looking that 5 times a year during May to September, we can provide larger events with support of partners, people who want to rent space off us for up to 2,000 people. I do really want to actually recognise and thank all the engagement from the local residents. We've had a lot of feedback. We've noted concerns particularly around noise, public nuisance, traffic safety, and the general impact on the welfare of residents in the local area having larger events. Those concerns have been listened to, and we have amended our request and timings and mitigations based on the feedback we've had from all departments. Our licensing officer has very kindly outlined all of those mitigations in detail, so I won't use up my time by going back over every single point. However, I would just like to reconfirm that we have had extensive discussions with the police, the noise and nuisance team. We invited our noise colleague, Craig, who's on the call, to come and review what our baseline was in the centre, so we had a better idea of how sound travels. And I know there were specific questions that came back about that, so I did invite Craig here to be our witness if there are questions of that nature. We also made sure that we reduced the operating hours, capped it at 5 events within that period. Mandatory hourly noise monitoring, which we've already practiced at recent events. And where we've done other smaller things, we've bought a mobile phone, dedicated phone number, so all residents can have a dedicated phone line which will be attached to the on-site manager while events are going on. So if there were any issues, you could ring a person and that phone will be with them wherever they are on site, whatever it is they're doing. So we could liaise with our residents to make sure that they're not being disturbed and that we're not breaching the terms of which we're applying for the licence. We are also making sure that we have stewarded dispersal, event-specific noise management plan, which has now been outlined in the additional papers, and we've done that with support from our noise and nuisance team. And every single one of these events will have 28 days notice, because we need to provide a parking plan, an event management plan, a risk assessment, and give you as our community notice 28 days before these events occur. So I'm hoping we've addressed the majority of the representations you've made with our amended licence and with our additional measures we have put in place. The controls we have put in place are targeted, proportionate, and hopefully sufficient to promote the licensing objectives and making sure that we prevent public nuisance and overall promote New River as a community space where people want to come and engage and do community events. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crouch. Excellent. So now we're going to move on to questions from members and then objectors, i.e. those objectors who have said they will speak. However, what I think I might do is I'll allow objectors to ask questions first. So what I will do, I will call the names of the objectors in turn that I have them on my speaking list. I hope that's a fair way of calling you to ask any questions of Ms. Crouch and potentially Mr. Bellringer. So Miss Kate Stewart, do you have any questions for Ms. Crouch?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for explaining all of that, Laura. I wonder if you can clarify about the larger events, which are the 2,000 people. It's not clear to me, are these 5 events or 5 single days? Because one of the events that happens every year is 3 days long. So potentially we could have 15 days worth of events. So some clarity on exactly what you mean by a larger event would be helpful. And a kind of subsidiary question to that, sorry, I don't want to throw lots at you all at once, but a subsidiary question is, if we have a larger event, what is a smaller event? So how many people would be at the smaller event? And in terms of the length of the smaller events, if we are sorry, my mobile phone's going off while I'm speaking. If the smaller events are running for 3 days and the noise volume is at the same level as the larger events, it's not only the capacity that we're concerned about, it's also the noise levels, as you've addressed. So I'm really not clear about a lot of the terms that you're using to define the events, and some clarity about that around that would be very useful.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Ms. Crouch, would you be happy to respond to? I can see she's taking copious notes, so we're going to allow her a moment to finish up the notes. But Ms. Crouch, could you please respond to that question? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. My apologies.
Don't worry, we've only been doing online meetings for 6 years and I suffered the same problem earlier, so don't worry about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stewart, for your question. So in terms of the larger events, our license request is for 5 days total. So five days, up to 2,000 people. We haven't actively got plans for those 2,000 events right now. What we want to do is make ourselves more marketable to attract different vendors, because we do get a lot of people querying our options for larger events, and us doing this is a part of that process. But 5 days in total between May and September is the purpose of the license. In terms of a smaller events, we're going to handle noise for events in the same way. So anything that we host which is not within the framework of our sports day events, our regular functions, what we're working on with the local management is that we're going to update our What's On page more regularly, so you can see what's coming up, and that telephone number will be live. So anytime we have community events, you will be able to call us if there are concerns over the noise. And in terms of what smaller events constitutes, at the moment it's up to 500. And then the council also has a series of single event licenses, which we don't host. Members of the community can opt to host. Our business as usual model is not anywhere near up to 2,000 people.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stewart, any other questions?
Yeah, if I could just ask a couple of follow-up questions to that. So there's 2 things. So we have the 5 events, the larger events that you say you're going to do, but then we have this issue of the fact that you're supporting other organisations to apply for licenses to hold events at New River. So the 5 for us feels a very movable feast. I mean, it feels potentially meaningless because you're held to 5, but there could be 25 additional external licenses given. So the 5 feels, I'm sure it's not meant to be, but it feels quite misleading to us because it doesn't actually cap the larger events at 5. It just caps your larger events at 5. And the second point is that the sports days, I understand you're a sports centre, so of course there's sporting events, and long may they last. But for a lot of the sports events, they have very loud music. So that there's one coming up in August, which is a sporting event, 4-hour football tournament, but it's advertised as having DJs. So that is a sporting event, but it also has a very heavy and potentially loud for us music element. So again, it feels like the devil's in the detail with these definitions. It's very hard for us to understand exactly what it is that you're proposing. And as soon as you have a sense of, oh, it's just 5 days, but then it could be an additional number of days with the external events, and then it could be an additional number of days with the sports days that have a music element to them. So that's not really a question, but I'm just expressing my confusion around your terms and your definitions and what we would be expecting in terms of events.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stewart. Ms. Crouch, do you want to respond to that, or I can move on to the next questions?
I think just to reiterate from our point is our business model is not changing from what it is now, beyond the fact that we want to make ourselves available as us being the license holders for up to 5 events for up to 2,000 people. Beyond that, we're not changing what it is we do. So we do have sports days. We have lots of different sporting activities, a lot of which do include music for participation or for ceremony, or the joy within the crowd. Lots of sports go hand in hand with a lot of music. However, we are reviewing noise management plans and our noise control measures for everything that's scalable across our site to make sure that our residents are looked after.
Thank you, Ms. Crouch. I think, Ms. Barrett, you want to come in with a clarification.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, so the example given of the football tournament and there's music there, that is not caught by the Licensing Act 2003. That music would be seen as incidental. You know, the reason for the activity taking place is not because it's a music entertainment. It's not it's not music generated event, and so therefore the music that's supplied for that, as what Ms. Crouch was just saying, be it because, you know, a goal scored or award ceremony or whatever that might be in between the activities taking place, would not be caught under the Licensing Act 2003.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Okay, I'm going to move on to Liz Edmonds. Miss Edmonds, do you have any questions for Ms. Crouch?
Hello. Yes, I do actually. Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of questions. Laura, you talked about a 28 days notice for these events, but I think I'm right in saying that for the third-party events or the smaller events, there won't be a 28-day notice period. And my second question was, in your event management plan, I believe you talk about subjective monitoring of noise. Now, I don't know why the monitoring should be subjective. In my view, the monitoring of noise should be objective, and it should be following a set procedure. So I'd like to delve into that whole area a bit more, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura Crouch.
Thank you. Okay, so for smaller parties and events, that's not subject to this license. So we're saying within the license request we've made for this, 28 days notice will be given. What I am picking up from all of this, this is not part of the license for this. What I am picking up is that there are things and ways we could be engaging with our community in a different way. And I'm going to take the opportunity to reflect on the feedback you're giving to see if there are things we could do differently for smaller events. But specifically 28 days notice, that is what we are tying ourselves to specifically for this license. In terms of subjective management of noise, we have built a process in place. So we've now got a noise management plan, and that will be tweaked based on the type of event as well. The things we are already doing are hourly checks at the boundaries, including videos being taken so we can see where is any audible getting through. Obviously, we've got Craig here if you've got specific questions around how the baseline tests were done. And how the calculations on decibels and things are were recorded, received, etc. And then alongside that, it's looking at the positioning of the equipment, which has now been marked on the noise management plan map, the direction of the speakers to minimise output across the wider space. What we can't control is the noise of the people. But if we're talking about specific amplified music that I know was in the representations, that is now captured within the noise management plan and the steps we will take.
Thank you. Miss Edmonds, any follow-up questions?
Yes, I do have a follow-up question, actually. So you've talked about music, monitoring of music. Perhaps this is a question for Craig, but I would be interested to know how your monitoring objectives will relate to bass, which is arguably, it can be more of a noise nuisance than music. Yeah, but you haven't really mentioned that in your in what you've been talking about with regard to your noise monitoring. Has that been a consideration?
Laura, would you like to respond to this point, or should we ask Mr. Bellringer to respond to this point?
If I can refer to Mr. Bellringer, I will pick up if there's any gaps.
Yeah,
Okay.
so overall, the baseline test was done on the overall decibel, what the sound outage would be. Regarding bass, obviously, with the lower octave, then yeah, it can travel and be a bit more sort of highly more explosion to people because it can travel differently. But you know, overall, the level it would be set at, it shouldn't be, you know, overly sort of intrusive in that aspect, I don't believe. The lower bass.
Sorry, no, continue. Apologies, Craig. I thought you'd paused.
No, yeah, no, I'm finished. I hope that answers the question.
Just one more. Sorry, yes.
Oh,
sorry.
One more question, Miss Edmonds.
No,
sorry.
Just one follow-up. Sorry, just one. Craig, what equipment?
Sorry, apologies. I need to interrupt you very quickly. Really sorry. Because Craig is a witness for the applicant, you do need to. You can't address the. I know this sounds like a silly technical point, but let's just stay on the right side of the rules. You can't technically address him directly. I know it sounds silly, but let's. It's unfortunately the rules we're working in. So technically, you're asking Laura the question, and then I'm deferring to Craig for the response. Apologies for that.
Sorry. Okay, so Laura, my question then, please, is just a follow-up question about the equipment that will be used to monitor the sound. Will you be using handheld decibel sound monitors?
Okay, so in the first instance, Laura, is this something you can ask, or shall I defer to Mr. Bellringer?
I believe we have been advised on what to buy. In terms of a portable handheld device. Sorry, I'm not very technically minded, but we have bought a device that is one that we can walk around with and check.
Mr. Bellringer, can you clarify?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so New River do have a portable sound level meter that has been purchased. Our team, or my team, also does have a Class 1 sound level meter, which is calibrated. It's quite a high spec one that you would use on any concert. So you know, New River have got theirs that they can go and check, and also my team would be, if needed, we can go down a spot check if residents have got any concerns around anything. We would also be going there as well to maybe making sure that they're inside their license if it was granted, and to make sure that all the noise levels are within the agreed levels.
Excellent. Thank you very much. If that's okay, I'll move on to Mr. Goat for any questions.
Thank you, Chair. My question, Laura, really is it's still on the decibel point. I'm still struggling to really understand the decibel level that you feel comfortable with for the residents to live with. At the moment, I'm not clear about that. I mean, Mr. Bellringer has said about bass being intrusive, but for me, that's not an objective indicator necessarily. So what, say historically, Laura, and going forward, is the decibel level that you think you are happy with to produce from the New River Centre?
So Ms. Crouch, over to you. And if you'd like me to defer to Mr. Bellringer, I can do that.
Thank you, Chair. We haven't set you can go up to this. Sorry, let me start that again. There is we don't want to breach this limit, and that is based off the London average, which I believe we talked about previously, which is 75 decibels. And then we worked with Mr. Bellringer to work out what our what it sounds like at the boundary. And then he also did some calculations based on what that should sound like from a music desk in a specific location hitting the boundary, which came under the London average, which was 75. But I will defer to Mr. Bellringer for those details.
Mr. Bellringer.
Yeah, so I conducted a noise assessment at the boundary of on Wolves Lane Junction with Woodside Road, 1 metre from the side of a property. We were getting an LAEQ average of sort of 66, which was, I thought was a little bit high as but it's quite a busy road and there was, multiple cars keep coming past. An LA 90, which is sort of what our background would be. So 90% of the time exceeded, and that was coming out at 44 decibels, which, a library would be classed as 40 decibels. So 44 would be sort of quite quiet. I had done a calculation in the centre of the pitch from New River and to the boundary of that property, it was 243 metres. The calculation that you would put, if the speakers were making 90 decibels at 1 metre away, the calculation you would run, it was coming out at 33 decibels of the boundary of the property by the time that 90 decibels at the site of the music speakers, it was 33 decibels. You add them together, not simple maths, logarithmic, and that would bump that 44 up by 0.3 of a decibel. So it would barely move the background, is what the calculations that I undertook of what it would be, which is what an acoustic report would be. What would be.
Thank you, Mr. Bellringer. Mr. Goat, any further questions from Ms. Crouch?
Yes, just one quick one. Thank you, Chair. So on that basis, Laura, could you ask Craig, please, was there any music playing at the time that measurement was taken?
No.
Please go ahead.
No, there wasn't any music at the time, but from the calculation or the background, we would know what the likeliness would be if the music was at 90 decibel 1 metre away from the speaker. You can work that out by calculations.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Goat, any further questions?
I have a very quick one, thank you, Chair. Just really about the DPS supervision of the premises. Historically, a lot of residents have taken their issues to the New River and they've been unaddressed. I need some reassurance that if there are issues happening, that the mitigations proposed are going to be adequate for people to bring any concerns to the site, that they will be addressed, that there will be a report of complaints. I need to know that any license stipulations are going to be enforced by the DPS there. What can you tell me about that, Laura, please?
Ms. Crouch.
Thank you. So yeah, part of our mitigations of this are going to be logging any concerns that come in from residents or any concerns that come in from individuals using the site during events, so we can be reactive. Now, our mitigations we've put in place for the license are to minimise the amount of reactivity we need to do. So we've got the noise management plan, we'll have event management plans, people dispersal, risk assessments, and dedicated staff on site with a telephone number. So if during an event there were any issues, if you wanted to call us, you would be on the phone to whichever manager was in charge of that event at that moment. They would have that phone number, and if there is an immediate concern, we would then be able to, as the license holder, address that very, very quickly. One of the things that I'm going to be talking about with my team is how longer term we engage better with our local residents. I haven't been in post very long. My colleague Tundi hasn't either, but we're really keen to start some more open dialogue and see more of you within the centre for meet the manager events and etc. to see what's going on in the community. So that is separate from the licence and not beholden to it, but that is part of how we want to integrate within the community, and that would give you an opportunity to talk to the wider team about anything rather than just larger events like we're discussing today.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to turn to any questions from Councillor Das Neves. Do you have any questions for Ms. Crouch?
Thank you, Chair. I do. Chair, if you permit me, I have a couple of questions, but one's dependent on the first, so I might ask the first, if that makes sense, if that's acceptable.
That's acceptable.
Just wanting to know, really, will you be helping, just be really clear, because I don't think I'm really clear, and it is complex, there's a lot of detail here, which I appreciate everyone going through. So thank you. But will you be helping external providers to apply for licenses? And for how many people and for how often? How frequently will these events be?
Miss Crouch.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I almost did it again. Thank you, councillors. So at the moment, that is our business as usual. So if a member of the public comes to us and says they want to rent space, lease space for a certain event, we will then pass them through to the licensing team to say, please talk to them about what sort of license you need, whether it be a specific event license, do they need to be a license holder, because there's a variety depending on what it is they want to do. Unless they can prove to us that they meet all the conditions of that license within their event plan, we do not host. So unless they can prove to us prior to the event that they have ticked every box and followed all compliance, we cancel their event. And we have that within our kind of standing operating procedure, where we say that we want to support you. And I know it says on our What's On About You page, within our licensing section, we have said we will support you. We will, in terms of we will advise you which part of the licensing team and the type of license you may want to request.
Thank you. Councillor Snevis.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, just following on from that. So I suppose the reason it feels relevant is that you're saying you're going to limit to 5 events, and I think that's great that you're showing you want to show narrow impact or being controlled. But I suppose my question is, how are you thinking about cumulative effect, especially of noise and nuisance and impact on people's quality of life? So I understand cumulative effect is a factor in how people might experience it. And given you haven't quite told me how many events, the external events you might have, and what those noise levels might be, could you address that? Are you planning cumulative impact assessments? Are you looking at how sequential event applications can impact?
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure I hit all of that. Okay, so we're only applying for up to 5, with the idea that when providers come to us and say they want to rent out the space for a larger event, we can now go, actually, you don't need to apply for a license. Here are all the mitigation plans. Here is how we're going to collaborate and work together, but we are going to be the license holder. So we're not suggesting that we will host up to 5 events and then somebody else might also come in and host a load of different events. What we're saying is that we're actually going to take on responsibility for the bigger ones. And we know our bigger ones come in between May and September, and we're projecting that we will have up to 5, which is why we put 5 within our license request. Now, that doesn't mean that other providers may not request larger licenses outside of those 5 that we are going to be responsible for. However, I think part of the conversation that we've had here and longer term is how we space those out. At the moment, we're saying 5 between May and September. You are correct. They are just for the ones that we host. The reality is we are a supporting facility, which is outdoors. The majority of our events are in that summer period. Everything else tends to be inside during the colder months and when it's raining. I don't currently have any limits on the amount of events we do, because we are also a business. We're looking to promote as many external sports and sporting teams that we have in the borough as best we can. So it's not exact. I don't have a set number, but what I am really keen to do is work alongside our residents to make sure that we're minimising impact at those larger events, which also means that our smaller events should not have any impacts that we can't mitigate before we even open the doors to the public.
Thank you. Councillor Snevis, any other questions?
I do. I have an observation, if you permit, Chair, and then I've got 3 little short, quick fire questions. My observation, or just to be really clear from what Laura said, is that there hasn't been any particular work done on cumulative impact of noise and of events in the community. That's what I'm taking from. So if you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then I just had three questions really. One is about the resource and the noise team, because we often get complaints from residents, forgive me, Craig, who express difficulty, it's busy borough, etc., and getting people out. So my question is, if there is an issue, how can we guarantee that there'll be resource to visit the venue and experience the noise, etc.? I had a question about whether or not either the noise team or any of the staff from New River had ever visited a property in the neighbouring area, that's someone's home or similar, during a New River event to experience the noise level. And my third question was, just to be really clear, the measurements that Craig did, forgive me, so I don't address Craig directly, were theoretical. They weren't done live in an event. They were done in theory based on some calculations. Just to be really clear about those three things.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Snevis. Ms Crouch, over to you, and then I think we are deferring to Craig on some of these points. So over to you, Ms Crouch, first.
Okay, so thank you. So in terms of cumulative impact, the way we measure anything is where things are going really well, where we see a reduction in complaints, a reduction in phone calls. So one of the ways that we'll be able to monitor how well we're doing this is how many times that dedicated phone call rings, how many times we have an email, are our mitigations that we've put in place really, really working, and the opportunity to revise those if they don't. So we are aware that a cumulative exposure to additional events going on in the area can have a longer term effect, but we do monitor our complaints and incoming feedback very, very closely so we can adapt what it is we're doing. And that's alongside mitigation for noise over time within that noise management plan. In terms of noise in homes and the way that the calculations were done, if I could refer to Mr. Bellringer, please.
Excellent. Mr. Bellringer.
Yeah, so the first question was about the noise team attending. Yeah, obviously, our noise team is relatively small. We deal with 10 to 12,000 complaints a year. So it is, hard to get around to every single person that makes a complaint to our out-of-hours service. What we are doing is we will be asking New River to supply us with the dates and times when they are having their large events, and we will be going down to spot check to take measurements in and around the area to make sure that, one, they're staying within their license, and if they step outside of that, then we'll be taking action against them if they are doing that. The other question was if we ever attended a property. Without having a look at the background, I wouldn't know off the top of my head. I know I did attend in 2025 when they were holding an event, but that wasn't to a complaint. It was, we went to the event to check under the licensing. So I wouldn't know if we have been to it in the past, unfortunately.
Thank you, Mr. Bellringer. Thank you, Ms Crouch. Okay, Robin Alcott, do you have any questions for Ms Crouch?
I do, Laura. You said that you run it as a business and you have a business plan, which means you have financials and projections. So I'd like to know what total number of events you are putting into that business plan. You can't have an I don't know in a financial plan. So what number are you working with?
Thank you very much, Ms Alcott. We don't have an end target right now. What we're trying to do is balance our books so that our budget position comes in at net neutral. But I can't speak to it just being New River. We run multiple sites across the borough, and our budget is reflected in that way. So primarily, and this kind of diverts away from licensing, so I'm being very careful with my time here. Our primary objective is more classes, more gym memberships, more people coming to use our sporting facilities as is. Us being able to offer rentals and leasing under a licensing is an additional part of that proposal.
Thank you. Ms Alcott, any further questions?
I just would like to emphasize that you must have a number that you're working with, even if it's a approximate number or a maybe number. You cannot balance between nothing and nothing. I'd like to know what placeholder number you're projecting. You can't have a business plan without that. Just for the next year, how many events how do you expect the balance to fall out? And I'm not worried about the other activities that you're planning or how that balances out to get to net neutral. How many events are you planning? What number are you using in that placeholder?
So before Ms. Crouch, you respond, I see Ms. Barrett's got a clarification to make. So Ms. Barrett, I'll come to you first.
Thank you, Chair. Unless the issue around the figure is in relation to a licensing objective being met or not being met, I don't understand the relevance of the question, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Barrett. Yes, unfortunately, I would have to agree that that doesn't fall within the purview of the Licensing Act with regards to a potential financial plan. We have the maximum number of large events that they're planning, so that has to be the number that we base our decision on. Apologies for that, Ms. Alcott. Okay, next on my list for questions is Mr. Garner, Mark Garner.
Hello, and thank you everyone so far. I'm afraid there's a couple of points. Can we clarify why weekdays and working hours are needed in the license for such wide licensing, especially given the types of events you're implying you want to run and allow others to host? Because the 5 days in covers council events, which have generally been in the weekends, which means it's outside of working hours. And the other side of that comes to recorded music. Ms. Barrett made a very good point about recorded music is incidental for most of these activities which you're proposing. As such, we don't really need recorded music in the outdoor space.
So, Ms. Crouch, over to you. Sorry, apologies, Ms. Barrett, you have a point.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Garner, you've misunderstood that.
Happy to be clarified.
My explanation was that under the Licensing Act 2003, in terms of deregulation, so if, for instance, somebody wanted to have their child's birthday party at the centre and wanted to hire the cafe area, for instance, or whatever space, and they were having, 20, 30 people there, it wouldn't be covered. It wouldn't need to be. There wouldn't need to be a mention on the license to facilitate that kind of activity.
That's brilliant. That's exactly
the issue around the issue around the regulated entertainment, in particular for anything happening outside on the pitch area, on the large track and field area there, is because of the capacity. It is over 500. They're seeking to be able to offer regulated entertainment for up to 2,000 people in that area, which is a licensable matter and therefore within the purview of this committee to consider.
But
thank you, Ms. Barrett.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification. I'll rephrase my question a little bit then, if that's all right, just to take that into account.
Could you also, Mr. Garner, speak up? You're very quiet, at least on my end, you're very quiet. I'm not sure if others are struggling to hear or if it's just my headphones being useless.
Any better?
A little bit better, yes.
Sorry. Teams being teams. So can we clarify why weekdays and working hours are needed in the license with such wide licensing, especially given the types of events you implied allows others to host? The 5 days only covers the council events. So trying to understand why weekdays and working hours are covered with such broad things. So from, I think it's still 11 until late, is alcohol, for instance, and the recorded music, which may not be incidental, but there's a question again during working hours of that being outside. And if you're only having 5 events, I mean, how much noise are we actually expecting throughout the year during the weekdays when people are working? We've got people, people working from home, and I hate to bring it up, but there is literally a cemetery opposite Wolves Lane, and I'm a bit sensitive about that sort of stuff. But I think you can get where I'm going on that.
Yeah. So, Ms. Crouch, I think if you could respond to that on the hours of the license.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry, it just comes up as Mark G. Was it Mr. Gardner? Garner. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Garner. So the reason the license has been designed in that way is to make sure that we're not exclusionary. We have, and specifically with the music during the week, we have sports days for schools. We have multiple groups that come in and use our space that want to use music as part of their event. So we've just included that within our license to make sure that we're not just blockading weekends or weekdays. We like hosting schools for their activities. A lot of local schools don't have as much sporting provision. Obviously, we've got the running track, which is very, very popular. We've got the bleachers for parents to come and see things. So we've included everything in our kind of scope of time.
Thank you. Sorry to add on to that. That's music, but there's also the alcohol thing I mentioned. Why do the kids need to drink?
Okay, so sorry, Dale.
So Miss Barrett.
Sorry, can I just make clear that children can drink water, of course. They cannot drink alcohol. Yeah, alcohol is not permitted to be sold to anyone under the age of 18. Applications that are submitted under the Licensing Act are very broad scope, and that's exactly how the government enables them to be. The legislation itself was around opening up licensing, basically, and making it more accessible, allowing, I mean, there was a whole campaign around having a new licensing system, a cafe culture, people able to enjoy activities in a 24-hour basis. And that was very much pushed by the government. So in that same vein, license applications do come in and are able to put down exactly what it is that the business may feel they want to operate under. And some of that might be shaved off during the consultation period, and other aspects are then further addressed when a matter comes to a licensing subcommittee.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Ms. Crouch, is there anything you'd like to add before I move on to the next question?
No, I think that covered everything I would have responded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Connolly, do you have any questions for Ms. Crouch?
You're on mute, Ms. Connolly.
Yeah. How many people are you going to employ to monitor the noise and also to institute sort of law and order amongst the guests? You know, some of them might drink too much and whatever else. Will you have bouncers? I mean, I personally, before this new initiative was proposed, on 4 or 5 occasions heard a lot of noise, and sometimes you could hear it right up to Wood Green High Road. And so, as regards the, you may just be so many decibels down in your spot, but you really need to have people on the ground up here in this residential area actually measuring the noise level, right, in Sylvan Avenue and Woodside. Also, are you aware of the fact that there's an awful lot of people with mental health problems living in this densely populated area with lots of HMOs? There is already, you know, there is already a certain amount of noise, and it's highly rented event, but there are, I don't know how many, quite a large number of elderly people, people with mental health problems living in community dwellings. And this could, you know, this is not very good really for our area to have persistent noise as amplified music. I mean, how are you going to monitor? I've also rung up the council and nobody's answered, only on one occasion. I mean, will you have lots of people ready to answer phones especially for the big events?
Thank you, Ms. Connolly. Ms. Crouch.
Thank you, Ms. Connolly. So I'll take these one at a time. The majority of what you're asking for will be addressed in our individual event management plans. So within the licensing pack, you will see that we've proposed we will do event management plans 28 days in advance. They include a risk assessment. It includes our security needs. It will show who's responsible for providing the security. Are we booking it, or is the event organizer booking it? What we do with the license ourselves is we are on site for the entire period, and that person is also the one that is going to have this dedicated phone number, which you all as local residents will have. So that is your phone number that will be available during events where you can ring if you have concerns, or if you've noticed that sound is travelling, you can tell us so we can rectify it immediately. In terms of the amount of staff, that depends on a per event basis, and part of our risk assessment. And again, that's part of our risk management plan, but we also work across departments. So we work closely with security, noise and nuisance, traffic, to make sure that we have organised the right people to be in the right place at the right time. And that is the same that any other community organiser would do. They would have to liaise with multiple agencies to get the right people in. So no, we're not going to be employing them directly to be part of my team, but we will be utilising our wider resources to book the correct people to do those functions in line with our event management plan.
Just the last question. Just one last question. Why did you choose New River Sports Centre, considering, would you consider Park Road, having a licence there for 2,000 people 5 times a year and up to 500 on a daily basis, or in Tottenham? Why do we in our area have to be disturbed by this?
Ms. Crouch.
And why did you choose this location?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Connolly. So each site has its own capacity and its own facilities. We are reacting to what it is we have used and the types of events we have managed. We know that at New River we have 40 acres of ground. We are a one-off in terms of the type of facilities we have, and we've recognised that there is a function there that we could be serving for the community to come and lease space from us from events. We wouldn't run a 2,000 person event at Park Road or Tottenham Green because those spaces do not have capacity or for facilities for them.
And the residents wouldn't approve of it.
That point is not a question. So we're going to move on. Miss Sarah Gornall, do you have any questions for Miss Crouch?
Yes, please. And thank you very much for giving us space. We are very pleased to hear that the New River Centre has got a noise management policy and that you're developing it and monitoring it effectively, we hope. We actually live 0.4 of a mile away from the centre in Norfolk Avenue, and I know a number of people in Norfolk Avenue have raised objections. The reason is we have no objection to a
Sorry, can I just, apologies to interrupt you, Ms. Goodall. This is for questioning rather than representation. So, so if you could ask a question of Ms. Crouch, and then we'll come to representations as the next part of the business. Apologies to interrupt you there, but I just wanted to make sure we're at the right path.
We are on the right path, and the question needs a bit of background, really. So, people along this road are driven inside in the summer by the noise from the New River, shutting doors, and it has an impact on health. And what I wonder is how you propose to build trust in the local community and find out the impact on, it builds on Councillor Das Neves' question about monitoring in people's residences. Because the background noise across the allotments and the New River, there's very little background noise. So it's quite possible that the noise travelled has a worse impact travelling across those silent spaces than across a major junction as the place where Craig Bellringer monitored the background noise levels. So how do you propose to find out what the impact is for us in this area and to build trust with us for the future? If we had trust, we wouldn't be objecting so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gornall. Ms. Crouch, over to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gornall. And is it Mr. Gornall with you so I can address you both?
Yes.
Thank you for your question. Okay, so I think I've mentioned these things already, but just to go over them again, we're going to keep track of any phone calls we get during events, so we can record what it is that's been said, when it's been said, and how we've reacted to it. We're doing hourly checks on the border to check for noise, and we're also taking evidential videos of what it is that we've heard. So if there's any other queries about when time was heard or where it was coming from, we have a record. Beyond that, one of the considerations that I'm taking from this, which is separate from the license, but a piece of work that I want to do anyway, is how we as the council officers and local management engage better in our communities. I think I said earlier, I'm relatively new to this role, not to the council, but to this role. And the next part of mine and Tundi's job is making sure that we do have meet the manager events. We have more open times for our residents to be able to drop in, talk to us about what's going on and what's important for them. And part of that can be any impacts we're having from events. Obviously, you can let me know later in your representations if you feel that would be beneficial, but that is something we'd like to do.
Does this apply only to the events for which licensing is being sought, or for the regular events?
So in terms of the community checks?
Yeah, and the monitoring.
So noise checks are built into every event, whether it's our event, a smaller event, or somebody else's. So any event where we have outside music going on, we do the border checks.
And was there an event on Saturday night at the New River Centre?
On Saturday?
On Saturday evening.
Chair, if you can come back to me, I can find out. I know we have had some events. I don't want to give you the wrong information.
Okay, excellent. We will do that. I'll let Miss Crouch find that information. Miss Gornall, can I check, is there any other questions in the meantime from yourself before we move on to questions from members?
Well, I think it was, if there was an event, how effective did you consider the noise monitoring to be on that evening? Because that was one evening when we had to go inside.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to allow Miss Crouch an opportunity to check that. I was going to move on to questions from members of the panel, but I don't. If Miss Crouch is finding the information, I don't think it's fair for members to ask questions of Miss Crouch as she's trying to find the information. So we will allow Miss Crouch to find the information first, and then I will we'll move on to questions from members. So we're going to all sit here quite nice and quietly whilst we allow Miss Crouch to find the information. Usually when I chair other meetings, I have some information to vamp with whilst we have a pause like this. Unfortunately, there's nothing very interesting I could probably share with members who are with those people who have joined us. Mr. Goat, is that a query you have, a clarification?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I believe in answer to Mrs. Gornall's question, that was the Mulberry Academy, the school opposite the New River, who is hosting a Montserrat Culture Day, because they equally have an alcohol license and an entertainment license, and it's, I think, material in terms of the consideration for this. I don't want to conflate the two issues, but certainly in terms of the wider area, if the school is hosting an event with an alcohol and music license and New River equally is doing the same at the same time, or even one weekend after another, say, it makes a mockery of this whole we're going to space out these events type thing.
So, and so Miss Crouch, are you okay to provide a response?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I can thank you, Mr. Goat. You are correct. It was the Mulberry School event. We did have a school event during the day, but there was also an event in the evening across the road at the school, which we were made aware of that evening. And in terms of clashes, the reason we're going to do the 28 days notice is so we can make sure that we're limiting any clashes within the area. And we have now been made aware that Mulberry School has a license, which doesn't affect our application, but it would affect how we plan our events to make sure that we're not bringing too many people into the area at the same time.
Okay, thank you very much. And Miss Barrett, do you have a clarification before we move on to members?
Yes, I was checking up on that date also, and was just going to say that it was the Mulberry Academy, and they don't have a premises license, but they do apply for temporary event notices, which they are entitled to do under the legislation.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Okay, we're going to move on to questions from members of the subcommittee I'll first go to Councillor. Our legal officer has a clarification point, Mr. Levitt.
Just a very small one, which is that if Mulberry Academy are operating under a 10 or seeking to operate under a 10, and the effect of that is going to be to cause problems with the licensing objectives in accumulation with anything that's going on at the centre, then that would be a matter that the licensing subcommittee, in considering the 10, could take into account.
In considering the temporary event notice rather than this licence in particular, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Miss Barrett, on this point as well?
Absolutely. So 10 temporary event notices are consulted on with the noise team and with the Metropolitan Police, and they have 3 days in order to make their comment on a temporary event notice. So if complaints are received about a premises, or if Mulberry School has come up as an issue of noise being generated, and that is made known to the noise team, then the noise team are able to consider that when they get the next 10s. They can then have that conversation and engage with the school around what they're doing around noise mitigation, and can consider whether or not they allow the 10s through under the prevention of public nuisance objective.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett, for that clarification. Okay, we'll come to questions from members. Councillor Amin, do you have any questions for Ms. Crouch?
I do. And I think I'll start with, on the 5 events, if I can, please. Laura, how did you come to the maximum capacity of 2,000 for each of these events? How did you come to this number? Why not 1,000? Why not 600 or 700? But how did you come to a capacity of 2,000 for the events? And I also wondered, as part of that, does that include just the people who are attending, or does it include staff, the performers, stewards, all of those kind of people? I mean, is it just people who are coming to the event? And finally, just have you previously hosted events approaching this size, and what lessons have you learned? I mean, because I can hear the complaints from residents, but what lessons have you learned and implemented so far?
Thank you, Laura. Ms. Crouch.
Thank you, Councillor. So 2,000 people came from our health and safety audit and our capacity on our hard stand, so where we have the track which is used for outdoor events, and our accessible facilities, stuff like bathrooms, access to exits, etc. So we would never go above 2,000 people for health and safety and the safe management of the site. That total does include all staff, all stewards, all health and safety, all security. 2,000 is our maximum capacity on site. So that is the total number. It's not 2,000 plus however many facilitators of the event. And then, sorry, the last question was, how did we get to 5?
Yeah.
We were reviewing previous queries.
The last question was, how did you, you've hosted, obviously, by the sound of it, big events. So I was wondering what lessons you've learned. I mean, because what I can hear as a member sitting on the panel is a lot of complaints from residents. So I wondered what lessons you've learned and what you've implemented. What kind of changes have you started to implement to address the kind of issues that residents are raising?
So one of the main changes that we have taken is to apply for the license to belong to us, because it allows us better control. We have the legal responsibility of the event alongside the event hosting. It gives us more power to shut things down more quickly, to make sure that we have overall responsibility. So that's one of the main mitigations we've put in place. Rather than waiting for third parties to come in and apply for their own license, we've said, actually, we know our site, we know best practice of how to facilitate on site. We will design and work on our license based on the things that we have seen other providers do. Now, We are talking about other providers still coming in and running events rather than us hosting them, us kind of setting up and managing them as council officers. And we have very, very stringent procedures in place on how we do that. Again, outlined within the license. Everything that's been outlined are based on things we've learned. So an event management plan to make sure that it's not just come from the provider, but we have input all of the legalities ourselves. We've created kind of terms and conditions where people pay deposits. We create lease agreements. We have a series of documents which reflect best practice in terms of leasing. And then we've also, throughout this process, liaised with Craig and the Noise and Nuisance team to make sure that we are meeting our meeting kind of requirements to make sure we're reducing risk of our community being upset. Now, I myself have only been part of the New River wider team since January. We have not had a license. We have not hosted up to 2,000 person event as far this year. However, we have, and it is in the licensing pack, reviewed all previous complaints, of which we picked up the themes and added that into our event management plan. And those were all listed in the pack that Dale shared with us earlier.
It's interesting, I suppose. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, how is the council going to be held accountable for the same standards as you would for any other premises, for that matter? You know, how are we going to make sure that you are held to account in the same way as we would, say, a pub down the road? Because otherwise it feels as if you're marking your own sheets, you know, just your own exam sheets, as it were. It just worries me a little bit that there isn't a different level of monitoring. I can see Robin's put his hand up, so I'm happy to wait for that answer.
Mr. Levitt, over to you. I'm sure you've got clarification on this point.
Very shortly. On the one hand, the council can't prosecute itself. On the other hand, if the council is doing something illegal, there's the possibility of a Section 5 report to council by the monitoring officer. So it's essentially will be covered. It has to be covered internally, but it has to be covered properly internally. There is direct input into that's set up from both licensing and indeed planning. If the council is breach of planning control, then that is also a no-no, and that has to be dealt with it has to be dealt with internally because we can't prosecute, but it is effectively dealt with internally ultimately by the monitoring officer.
Okay, that's helpful.
Can I just get, oh, sorry, apologies, Councillor. I mean, I just wanted to get clarification from Miss Barrett. So, for example, if the license were granted and there were a number of complaints, etc., there could still be a potential review of the license, which could result in revocation, amendment, changes, etc.
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. It's held to the same standards as with any other license.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Miss Barrett.
I think,
Councillor Amin.
Following on from my questions, I mean, who's going to monitor the compliance, as it were, that the council are doing right? And you know, who is going to be the monitoring person who will make sure that the council is doing is focusing on the same standards as every other? So there is, I mean, there's a knock-on effect, I think, from those things. So I think it's something for us to think a bit about and consider. The other things, I guess, for me were, I mean, I can hear the residents. I mean, I can understand the difficulties. I wondered why, Laura, we don't have a proper email system. I mean, for Tottenham Hotspur, there is a separate email now, so that people are able to email the council and say, this is the complaint I've raised, because otherwise it's very easy for complaints to be lost. You know, if you make a phone call, it's quite easy to say, I didn't get a phone call, or it's quite easy to forget, or people, you know, they might be busy or whatever. But I think having some level of kind of monitoring, which is separate from just the person, would be a helpful thing. I think an email process would be helpful. And I also wondered, I mean, you've got really lovely residents who are all obviously very keen to be involved and have say in this matter, and the councillors as well. And I just wondered also, Laura, whether one of the things might be to have a little committee of people who are involved in kind of thinking through, especially the 5 big events, what they're going to be, or how are they going to be notified, how are they going to how things are monitored. I mean, just so that people are more involved and more engaged in this process, as opposed to just from the outside and just be informed about the event itself. But I just wonder whether there maybe you lost opportunities to try and engage with the residents a bit better than you are at the moment.
Okay, Miss Crouch.
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of complaints, what we did throughout this process, and we will continue to do, is any complaints that come in, we make sure that they're logged through our complaint system so they are not lost. So rather than directly responding, we make sure that they're uploaded to our complaints portal, they're assigned to the correct officer, and they are then responded to, which also gives me a way of tracking the complaints that come in. Now, in terms of the event management and those phone calls, whoever is in charge of that event, they are also going to be completing a phone call log, stating any phone calls that they received from residents, what their request was, and anything we immediately did to respond. You know, the music is too loud, resident told me at this time, I then went and turned down the music X, so we can track. And then the last thing, and I'm sure my colleague Tunde will back me up on this, we're really, really keen to engage with our communities more, and that is separate from the licence. But we are aware that New River is a really big site surrounded by a lot of people. We are going to work on a regular opportunity for residents to come in and talk to us and tell us what's going on with them, what they'd like to see within the facilities. And that is part of our kind of culture shift as we move into, so we've now created our active wellbeing programme. Community engagement is very much part of that.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, any questions from yourself?
Yes, I have a few. So I wanted to touch on public safety. I know you've mentioned that the capacity around the 2,000 comes from capacity of the internal, but I just wondered if you could clarify what the total parking capacity is available on the site, and then again, what's been taken into account regarding that anticipated parking demand and transport impacts, particularly thinking about that size of the event up to 2,000.
Yeah, so in terms of our car parking, travel contingency, so on-site parking, we have 148 spots across the 3 car parks, which is soon going to include some EV charger cars, so we can try and encourage a bit more green travel into the area. We do have the bus routes at either end of the road. Primarily, we try and encourage all events to come using foot, which is a 10-minute walk from Wood Green Station, for instance, or the local bus routes. Other than that, we do have on-site parking available. However, with the big events, they are going to be stewarded. So there will be car park stewards making sure that people are diverted to the correct spaces and that they're sent to, because we've got 3 car parks, is making sure that their ingress and egress is safe.
Okay, and then when that on-site parking reaches capacity, what measures are implemented to prevent overspill and I guess associated impacts on the neighbouring residential roads?
So that is part of the event management planning, is how what we've done with events recently is say, please try and come on public transport, or if you're bringing equipment, please come and drop it off and then remove the vehicles. Now, we try and mitigate that the best we can. We are aware that traffic in the neighbourhood is an ongoing issue. However, part of our event planning process is a traffic management plan. So residents will be able to see this is where we're sending people, this is what we're expecting on the day. I can't give you a particular play-by-play because it will be event specific, depending on the demands and are we having a coach come in with a load of kids for a football tournament, or are we having lots of cars for a party? It really will depend event by event.
Yeah, I guess my question has just come from that 2,000 is a very large number of people, and just thinking about that preparation for that. And yeah, but I think you've kind of covered that off in the event management plan. I think my other question was just around how event activity, including alcohol sales and that crowd dispersal, will be managed alongside existing use of the site by children, young people. I know there's schools, neighbouring, sports clubs, things like that. So just how we're ensuring that licensing objective of protecting children from harm is promoted when in the kind of area.
So in terms of a licence, all staff need to be trained. They need to do Challenge 25. No street drinking is permitted. SIA security is required to disperse and also to make sure that people aren't drinking outside the premises. Again, that comes alongside our security management plan with really tight controls of where on site we're allowed to serve alcohol. And there is no vertical drinking allowed on site. So there'll be seated spaces where people can have their drinks, and they will not be allowed out the front or into the community with beverages. And then in terms of children controls, I think I've already said we will not be, or our event hosts would never be, serving alcohol to minors. They will follow the Challenge 25. They also have to log if a youngster did try and they challenged and they could not produce ID, they also then have to report that. They have a duty to report that they found someone trying to obtain alcohol underage. And then anything else, again, kind of captured in that security management plan, to make sure that everyone is kept safe. So sufficient security on site. A lot of it is liaising with those third-party organisations. What is it they're doing? Who is it they're bringing? Who are the people impacted? And making sure that's in our risk assessment.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Bell, Councillor Amin? Just a couple.
Could I ask just very quickly, please, Nick? I'm just thinking. I mean, I think I talked about the residents' engagement, but you also got councillors in the local area, and I just wondered whether, there should be either pre-meeting before big events, or after, so that there is a discussion about what worked well and what didn't work so well, so that there's a way of kind of understanding from both sides of. Both from the councillors who will be talking to residents about, the way things are going. I just wondered about that. That was one thing. And two, I guess, I'm just wondering, it's a really lively setting, things are going on. So I just wondered also, I mean, you talked about having a meet the manager event, but it just seems to me it's a lost opportunity to have councillors involved in some way, either in the management committee or in some of the wider engagement process, so that they are there in a much more active format. They're there to know what's going on. They can be your ambassadors for things that are really good that are happening. It just seems a shame not to make the best use of your local councillors in the way they are there often,
Miss Crouch.
Thank you. Yeah, I think maybe my language I used earlier maybe sounded exclusionary. Of course, our local councillors are welcome. You're members of our community. You help represent different parties. I know what we're proposing. That is not reflective on the licence and the request. That's just something we're recognising locally we want to do. So yes, absolutely. There's no reason why councillors would be excluded from public meetings, community meetings where we engage with residents.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, Ms. Crouch, hopefully quick ones, because actually a lot of people have raised the questions that I had written down. I've been crossing them off my list. With regards to direct notification of larger outdoor events, I can't remember if you mentioned that you'd be putting out leaflets, but would that be something to local residents? Would that be something you consider, and how wide a radius might you be looking at to let residents know who might not be monitoring the website or getting emails about events? And then the second question, I'll let you write that down. The second question is, can I just get a bit more information about, will you be doing post-event reviews either after the larger events, either with or without complaints, and then what lessons learned and how you will share that with residents in the local community, and how that will shape then future bookings?
Thank you. Yes. So primarily we're going to be using the what's new, what's going on page on our website to advertise when things are going. However, reviewing the engagement we've had and the feedback we've got, we need to do something a bit more. Now, it's not economical for us to leaflet the entire area, but what we will look at is where we can use our digital information boards that are along the side of the sites, and also can we put up event notices on the borders so people can see there will be an event on the 28th of July for X. If you want to come and have a conversation about it, here's the telephone number, here's when the meeting will be. So I think we're trying to cover as much as we can, and they will be 28 days notice as within the provision of the license. And in terms of post-event reviews, part of what we have built in is we do a monthly managers forum where we reviews in goals, targets, deliverables, a variety of different things. But one of those things we also do is reflective practice. So what have we done differently this time? What was the impact? Do we need to change anything? And we learn as a group. So we get people to give examples of things they've tried, what happened, and anything they do differently next time. And then we can take that learning and apply it to next events or next practice, depending on what it is. And we will build this into that. Anytime we have a big event, we will do an open discussion on reflection alongside hearing from our community and how it was for them.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Mr. Crouch. So that comes to the end of this section. We will now move on to the next part, which is we'll now take to hear from those who have submitted representations, and we confirmed the list of speakers a bit earlier on. Each of you will have 5 minutes. We'll take all the objectors in turn and then handle questions to objectors at the end, which will be questions from the applicant and questions from members. As I mentioned earlier, in your representation, please do not share your home address. It's fine, as I mentioned, it's fine to say you live in the vicinity or you live on a specific road, but please do not share specific home addresses. So with that in mind, I'm going to first come to Ms. Crouch. You've got your hand up. Is that a clarification? Oh, sorry, you've just muted yourself.
More of a comfort request. I've been talking for 2 hours. Can I just have a moment for a comfort break and I will come straight back?
Okay, I will allow a couple of minutes for a comfort break, and so everyone has an opportunity to do that. So we'll pause for a moment as people take breaks or refreshments.
Thank you very much.
Miss Barrett.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. So reconvene 20:59-ish.
Oh, God.
Can I just remind everyone to remain muted, please?
Sorry, Mary, you're not on that.
What did you say?
Sorry, you weren't on mute until you got your
I
camera on.
was muted, yeah. Huh?
So it's all good.
Please. Okay, it's 20:59. We will crack on with the next part of the hearing. Just waiting for people to return to the screens. Excellent. Okie dokie. So I confirmed the order of speakers earlier. So we'll first come to Kate Stewart. Ms. Stewart, you have 5 minutes. Ms. Stewart? Oh, sorry, apologies.
Thank you. We did submit a request that myself, Rob and Liz speak in the order of Liz, Rob, myself. We remember members of an organisation. Okay. Is that okay?
Yes, apologies. I had it down as Kate, Liz and Rob. So so it's Liz, Kate and then Rob. Is that correct?
Liz, Rob, Kate.
Liz, Rob, Kate. Apologies. Okay, so
thank you.
Liz, sorry about that. I must have written it down incorrectly. So Liz Edmonds, over to you first.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Liz Edmonds and I'm speaking as a resident and on behalf of Woodside Matters, a local residents group. I'd like to focus on the licensing objective of the prevention of public nuisance and specifically on residents' experience of events that already take place at New River. The concerns being raised today are not hypothetical. They arise from what residents have already experienced. Over recent years, a significant number of local residents have reported a marked increase in the levels and frequency of noise disturbance from events held at the site. Residents have described horrendous amplified music, thumping bass, and announcements being audible all day and late into the night, not only in gardens and outdoor spaces, but also through double glazed windows. A female resident of Woodside Road emailed Haringey Noise Complaints on the 14th of June 2026 during a sporting event and described how she could clearly hear relentless, prolonged noise inside her home, which prevented her from relaxing in her garden or inside her house and disturbed her child's rest. She called the out-of-hours phone line, which went unanswered. Now I'd like to quote from an email sent to us by Dora Whittock of Woodside Road. And she says, "When music events are on, I can hear the music in my house and in the garden. The level of noise feels antisocial, and the events often go on for much of the day and into the evening. I have young children and a chronic health condition. I am registered as disabled, and the noise really impacts us as a family." I've spoken to other residents in Sylvan Avenue who reported that when events are in progress, they have been unable to hold conversations in their own back gardens and can actually feel the bass vibrations. Derek Austin, leader of the 16th Wood Green Scout Group on Wolves Lane, described that when there is an event at New River, the Scouts are unable to hear the leaders in their Scout Hall during activities. The vicar of St Cuthbert's Church on Wolves Lane has stated that noise from the New River can already be loudly heard within the church and that the proposed licence will make services very difficult. So it's clear that local community assets as well as residents are disrupted by the noise. These concerns are reflected in the unprecedented number of objections that have been submitted in relation to this application, which is in excess of 100. That level of objection is itself evidence that these concerns are not isolated complaints from a small number of individuals. Residents from roads on all sides of the New River, including Maryland and Woodside to the west, Norfolk Avenue to the north, Ewart Grove to the south, and Paisley Road to the east, have all described similar experiences. Many have told us that intrusive noise from events has affected their ability to enjoy their gardens and relax in their homes. Most residents accept that occasional large events are part of the life of a community sports centre, provided that nuisance is adequately monitored and prevented. However, with the amplified music and announcements now associated with sports events, the noise disturbance is continual. In 2014, when sporting facilities at the centre were expanded, planning recognised that noise from this site could cause nuisance and imposed unusually stringent controls. Residents' experience is that those controls are already not being consistently enforced. Against that background of the site already causing regular public nuisance, how can a much broader licence do anything other than make the situation worse? The true extent of nuisance may be significantly under-recorded. One reason for this is that many residents have made verbal, in-person complaints to New River, which are not logged. Others have experienced difficulties using the council's noise reporting systems and consequently have given up trying to report nuisance. I share these frustrations. I downloaded the council's noise app on the 3rd of May 2026, but was unable to submit recordings via the app because my case had not been assigned to an officer. Despite contacting the noise team about this, I have received no response to date. Residents have also raised concerns and frustration about the lack of Haringey noise team personnel on a Sunday, despite many events taking place at weekends. Information supplied by the council following a Freedom of Information request this year states that noise complaints relating specifically to New River are neither logged nor identifiable within the complaints system. The key point I would ask the committee to consider is this. There is already evidence of public nuisance associated with events at this site. Residents are already experiencing noise disturbance. I have just two more sentences. Before additional permissions are granted, it is important that the committee considers whether existing nuisance is being effectively managed and whether residents can have confidence that future nuisance will be prevented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Robert Goat.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Robert Goat. I am speaking as a local resident. I would like to focus on the likely future impact of the application and the licensing objective of preventing public nuisance. Residents are already experiencing nuisance from amplified sound associated with activities at the site. The question is whether granting broader permissions will intensify that impact. The application seeks very broad permissions. It would allow events up to 2,000 people, amplified music, public address systems and alcohol sales from morning to night throughout the week and weekend. Cumulative impact is already beginning to occur. During the first 2 weekends of July alone, 6 separate event days are scheduled. This illustrates why residents are concerned not about isolated events, but about repeated and recurring disturbance. In addition to loud music, there's a cumulative effect of traffic and parking pressures and late evening dispersal of large numbers of people into surrounding residential streets. Additionally, the site is poorly served by public transport, with Wood Green Tube an 18-minute walk and infrequent buses. The location of the site is particularly important. New River is not situated in a commercial entertainment district. It sits within a residential area directly opposite 2 schools and alongside a range of community facilities used by the local residents throughout the week. The scale of entertainment permissions sought goes well beyond what many residents would normally associate with a local community sports centre. Following residents' objections, the applicant issued a response letter that introduces a range of safeguards and reassurances that do not appear in the original application. Residents welcome those proposals. However, their inclusion demonstrates that the concerns raised by residents are legitimate and that the original application did not itself contain sufficient safeguards. However, key terms still remain undefined in the response letter. The letter refers to larger events, smaller events, limited duration, and a majority of sports-focused events, but nowhere are those terms quantified. Residents still do not know how many events may occur, how large they may be, how long they may last, or how compliance would be measured. Conditions must be clear, precise, and enforceable. Ambiguity makes enforcement difficult and undermines confidence. In the applicant's response letter, it is stated that there will be no more than 5 large community events annually, that there will be no back-to-back events, and there will be a minimum of 2 weeks between larger events. However, the forthcoming Nigerian football event with DJs on the 15th of August and the Reggae Music Festival with live music and DJs on the 22nd of August are scheduled within a week of each other. Moreover, New River has already advertised its ability to assist third parties with obtaining licenses for commercial events, which could involve amplified music and DJs, which may presumably be scheduled on any weekend without a New River event. Given the existing concerns and the failure of New River to mitigate the impact of its current sporting activities and events on the community, the scale of the permissions sought and the residential nature of the surrounding area, many residents believe there is a real risk that the application would significantly intensify nuisance rather than reduce it. This committee is not deciding whether New River should hold community events. It is deciding whether this particular licence in this particular residential location is appropriate and necessary to promote the licensing objective of preventing public nuisance. For those reasons, I respectfully ask the committee to refuse the application. If the committee is minded to grant any licence, residents ask that stringent, enforceable conditions be imposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Kate Stewart.
Thank you. I use New River myself and I want it to succeed as a sports centre. Other residents have raised the question of trust, and my concern today is whether the applicant has demonstrated that they can be relied upon to comply with licence conditions, manage events responsibly and respond effectively when problems arise. Licence conditions are only effective if they're understood, implemented and enforced consistently. Based on residents' experience, I do not believe the applicant has demonstrated that level of management. Sports have taken place at New River for many years. What's changed more recently is the increased use of amplification. Residents have experienced repeated disturbance from announcements, commentary, music, heavy bass and the repetitive music stingers associated with sporting activities. Between the 26th of April and the 14th of June this year, I reported multiple incidents when the sound was clearly audible inside my home. I raised concerns directly with New River staff, both in person and by phone. Significant reductions in noise rarely followed, and when they did, the sound increased later on in the day. This gives me little confidence that complaints are being effectively managed and that conditions are being consistently enforced. The committee has evidence of previous compliance concerns. For example, in 2023, there was significant disturbance to the local community when an event was run without the necessary licence being in place. During the August 25 festival, the council's noise team raised concerns about compliance with event controls relating to attendance numbers and live music being played. Residents were also assured that the event on the 17th of August would finish at 8 p.m, but it remained clearly audible beyond that time, despite management having been reminded the previous day that the temporary event notice requirement to finish at 8 p.m. I appreciate that this committee is not responsible for enforcing planning conditions. However, the Council's Planning Enforcement Service confirms that if the application is granted, planning conditions controlling operating hours and amplified sound may be breached. This is relevant to licensing assessments on whether the premises can operate without causing public nuisance. Management is aware of this requirement to control noise affecting neighbouring homes, yet residents continue to experience significant noise disturbance. That continued history of not respecting conditions is relevant when considering confidence in their future compliance. There's also a long-standing hole in the perimeter fence through which people regularly enter and leave the site. In my view, that raises concerns about the applicant's ability to control access and enforce licensing conditions relating to capacity limits and alcohol management. I'm also concerned that management appears more focused on evidencing compliance than on assessing and controlling the actual impact of events on neighbouring residents. For example, management cites mobile phone recordings taken at the site boundary as evidence that noise levels are acceptable. However, these do not reflect the noise impacts inside homes and gardens, particularly from the low frequency bass that residents find very intrusive. Similarly, residents were told that a recent police visit indicated noise levels were acceptable. However, PC Ben Wolf of the local Safer Neighbourhood team has confirmed that assessing noise compliance would not normally be a police function. So as a result, I believe that this visit cannot be relied upon as an assessment of noise impact. The application also describes the site as being in a, quote, generally commercial area. That characterisation of the site is difficult to reconcile with the reality that it's surrounded by residential streets and is described in the licensing report as a residential area. This raises concern that the impact on nearby residents may not have been fully appreciated by the applicant. Taken together, these matters show a consistent pattern: repeated disturbance, limited response to complaints, previous compliance issues, inconsistent assurances, operational weaknesses, and evidence that does not fully reflect the impact on residents. In sum, the Licensing Act requires licence holders to take active steps to promote the licensing objectives. Based on the evidence before the committee, I do not believe the applicant has demonstrated that they can be relied upon to do so consistently in relation to the prevention of public nuisance. For those reasons, I respectfully ask that the committee refuse this application.
Thank you very much. I now call Councillor Lucia Das Neves.
Thank you, Chair. Committee members, picture this. You've worked a long shift, travelled home, and just as you slip off your shoes to relax in the house, you feel the booming bass bouncing off your block of flats. Or you're just about to put your kids to bed on a hot evening, but even with the windows shut, their sleep will be disturbed by loud music and tannoy announcements coming from New River. This is what residents in the ward have come to me about in the context of this licensing application, and they've come in their droves. I've had a deluge of objections, the largest amount of emails I've had about a single issue in the ward in my 8 years as a councillor. Who are the people who've written to me? It's the local scouts who can't hear each other over the racket from music. The local church, representing so many people, including many who don't use email and don't feel empowered to come to a meeting like this. It's the local allotment users who don't visit on events days because they can't find peace. It's residents on local estates and private renters on residential streets. Not to mention the local GP practice that is worried about the impact on well-being of their patients who are often doing well-being gardening sessions locally. 2,000 people, is that 2 secondary schools worth of people maybe? Loud music, announcements into the night, and alcohol. It's a heady mix. The planning decision back in 2014 makes clear that the noise from music has the potential to be a nuisance. Traffic and transport are already a concern. Speeding cars on local roads are commonplace. The W3 and the W4 buses already have challenges. 4 people per car would make that 2,000 people translate into 500 car movements ×2 at arrival and departure. White Hart Lane and its junction with the high road are already awaiting changes because of safety. Complaints regularly come in about crossing safety on both White Hart Lane and Wolves Lane. Committee members, this is a council application. I'd expect the council to take greater care of working with, not doing to residents. A line in a budget consultation about the opaque concept of commercialisation is not engagement. This centre runs services that serve local people. It aims to increase well-being, to make life better. Brilliant. What is proposed contradicts this directly. Mental health well-being is a huge issue for us in Haringey. We know that, we have that evidence. The health and well-being strategy sets out a path to increasing wellness. Loud, noisy events that increase traffic and increase local alcohol consumption are surely the exact opposite of what we need here. I urge the committee to reject this application.
Thank you, Councillor Das Neves. I now call Robin Alcott. Robin?
Thank you. I live 0.4 miles away from New River, and I too am a private resident concerned about expanding the current licensing brief in a dense residential area. I particularly want to discuss why the projected noise, despite whatever new measures have been put in place, is still so severe and dysregulating and physically impactful. And it is not just a story about volume and decibels. Volume is a problem, but there are 3 points to noise nuisance. So part 1, volume. At the few events a year that are already held, it is a problem. we note that the open air stadium is open on 3 sides and there's no noise barriers. There's nothing really to obstruct the noise progressing and moving across the landscape to where the residents are. And I am one of those people who has been sitting in my garden, unable to have a conversation with somebody sitting directly next to me over the noise. Mr. Bellringer said that their target maximum is 75 decibels, but I note that normal conversations are 60 to 7 decibels. So that definitely lines up with my experience. And I'm concerned about this target decibel amount. But it's not just about the volume. It is really, really about the low frequency bass thumping. These are long wavelengths that penetrate right through double glazed windows, double glazed doors, even when they're closed. Inside my home, I can feel the acoustic pressure physically as I stand on the floor. You can feel the buzzing, the vibration coming through the floor. When I touch the kitchen counter on occasion, it's buzzing. I've watched on one occasion a glass of water rippling with this vibration. And in the past, there has been at least one event going on after midnight. You can feel the buzzing in your bed and it's irregular. It's staccato. You don't know when it's coming next. You can't sleep. And the third part of the noise problem is that amplified human speech blasting is really, really disruptive to human beings, even when it's not particularly loud, because our brains are designed to be attentive to speech and to try and find out what you're hearing. And humans are not like whales and dolphins who can manage 2 different conversations. If you have an overwhelming tannoy blasting through inside your house, you can't focus. You're drawn to that conversation and it's intermittent. It's not regular, it's unpredictable. You can't focus on work. You can't go to sleep. But yeah, lots of people work from home, full-time, part-time. The school children, they need to focus on their lessons. Shift workers need to sleep during the day. We've got nurses and paramedics and police officers and all the first responders, bus drivers, people that need to sleep during the day so they can be critically awake and responsive and help us all for a great community. In conclusion, I would like to say that I'm very sorry. This is a wonderful resource. I'm glad for the sports, but to date, New River has not gotten a handle on controlling the noise. Recording decibels only is inadequate. It does not manage or monitor the amount of disturbance that is put on the residents in the area. The base frequencies also need to be monitored and strictly limited. Before we expand this licensing to what is, a very unclear breadth, we really need to get the noise management effective and managed before anything is permitted. So I would like to ask the committee to stand with local families and uphold the requirement of no audible noise within homes. And at this time, until this is managed, to deny this current application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Mark Garner.
Thank you. Can you hear me better now?
A little bit better, yes.
Okay, I'll try and speak up. Thank you, Chair. My name is Mark and I'm speaking as a resident of Woodside Road. I'm here to object to this licence application because the proposed hours and activities would cause a clear public nuisance and loss of immunity for the residents it's meant to serve. I live very close to the leisure centre and I can already hear events during double glazing, let alone if my family or my neighbours are outside. Extending hours for amplified and recording music and adding late night alcohol sales and sales during the day is simply not appropriate in neighbourhoods surrounded by homes, schools and a cemetery. This is a sensitive area that already struggles with noise, traffic, and even just litter from ordering park queues we can't keep up on top of. Whilst outside the narrow scope of the licence set, the application does conflict with the existing planning permissions which state the amplified speech from music must never be audible inside the residential properties. It already is. Granting this licence would undermine the protections residents explicitly promised. On the compliance side of things, which is needed for the licensing to be permitted, there are also serious concerns. Previous events have already breached the planning condition on noise. Those are the same conditions which have been trying to be met by the existing controls. The intention to limit use is not binding, and given past digressions, residents have little confidence that the conditions will be respected. Community engagement has also been lacking. The police response is dated 28th of May, after residents raised concern in mid-May. Councillors were not consulted until residents alerted them. It should not take community objections for the venue to begin addressing impacts. There is a lot of ground to be made up, and the venue needs to demonstrate that it can operate responsibly before any licence is considered. As has been said before, traffic and parking pressure is already severe on the narrow one-way streets around the site. Additional vehicle movements, deliveries and late night dispersal will increase noise, congestion and safety risks for the school children, residents and visitors to the cemetery who will have understandable expectations of their visit there. For these reasons, the licence objectives of preventing public nuisance, protecting children from harm, ensuring public safety are not met. I respectfully ask the committee to refuse the application in the current form. If the committee is minded to grant anything, I ask for strict limits. No outside audible amplified music during the, let's say, the council office working hours as a baseline. Significantly reduced hours. The no weekday alcohol sales before 1 p.m. and after 1 and 7 p.m. or alcohol sales have to be after 12 p.m. on weekends. Ensuring lately proposed robust events transport management plans and independent noise monitoring are in place and strictly enforced. It's taken until the community objected to a license request, until our concerns have been responded to by the venue. There is a lot of ground to be made up. I ask the committee that the venue proves it can operate within and with the community before that license is considered. The community venue has forgotten the community that it sorely needs to be a success both financially, but as a support for that community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Mary Connolly.
I won't really say very much because it's been very well said by the previous speakers, I live in Sylvan Avenue, and I personally could hear the noise at the very end of Sylvan Avenue, Wood Green High Road. If there are regular events, I will have to tell family and friends not to visit me on those days, because I know that I will not be able to, it has happened in the past, have a conversation with people. I also am concerned about our area being a very needy area. There's already an awful lot of noise because of the numbers of HMOs. I mean, I've got 3 facing me in my garden, and I'll have another one next door soon. So I'm already coping with an awful lot of noise and disruption because of the bus service. So I don't think I could cope with very much more. But all the issues that the previous speakers have made, I totally agree with, and I don't have any confidence that the noise will be regulated and that, you know, it'll be an improvement to the lives of the residents here.
Thank you, Miss Connolly. Mrs. Gornall, Sarah Gornall.
Thank you. So we live in Norfolk Avenue, and it's about 0.4 of a mile from the New River Centre. So I would ask the committee to consider 2 things. One is that this area is described in the briefing as a commercial area, generally commercial. I think you've heard from so many residents that you understand there are many residents who are impacted by the New River activities. In addition to that, there is a large allotment area with well over 300 allotment owners, and I work on the allotment too, which has a well-being garden to which patients at the Arcadian Centre are referred in social prescribing to promote their well-being. There's been a lot of talk about noise as a nuisance. I would ask you to consider that noise is also a potential killer. There are roughly 12,000 people every year who seem to die as the result of excessive noise across Europe, because excessive noise raises people's heart rate, their blood pressure, their stress level, and contributes to increased mental health issues. People live here, they don't just work here. And I think the council has a responsibility under its active well-being policy to consider what will promote the health and well-being of those around, and to mitigate anything that might harm, and to consider noise as a potential harm to health rather than just a nuisance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Gornall. Okay, before we move on to questions, sorry, just making a note to myself. The clerk has his hand raised. Nazia, over to you.
Yes, Chair. Just to confirm that it is now approaching 9:30, and we would need the subcommittee's agreement to extend the meeting beyond 10 o'clock if necessary.
Thank you, Naz. Oops, sorry. Yep. Thank you, Naz. Councillor Bell, Councillor Amin, can I get your agreement, please?
Yes, agreed.
Agreed.
Excellent. Okay, that's been agreed and noted for the record. We now come on to questions to the objectors. I will turn to Miss Crouch first. Do you have any questions to the objectors? And if you could, well, specify who the question is for, and then they can respond.
Thank you, Chair. Just for my education here, there were a few things I noted throughout that I thought were maybe inconsistent or incorrect. Am I allowed to ask questions to query those and respond accordingly?
Yes, I will permit that.
Okay, thank you. It's nothing too much. I think that what I wanted to make reference to was, sorry, let me find the right person. My apologies. Miss Edmund, sorry, Liz. I just want to make sure I've got the right person. Miss Edmonds, thank you. I know that you made reference to the request for noise complaints being told that that does not exist. So with permission, I would like to clarify, because that was an engagement that myself and you had. What was requested was an FOI for all complaints, and I spoke to the complaints department and they returned to me and said that that document does not exist. So an FOI is specific to a document, which is what the response was. It's not that we do not track complaints and noise complaints, it's that what you requested was a log of all noise complaints, and that document, as you requested, did not exist. So that was it was just a clarification on the way that was worded.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. Sorry, I was being optimistic, thinking that might be turned into a question, but if it's a clarification point, it probably should best suited for your summary. Apologies for that. I was maybe being overly optimistic. It was going to turn into a question there. So if we can stick to questions, please, at this point, and then any clarifications not linked to a question will then have to be picked up in your summary.
Okay, so okay, sorry. So some of the things I've noted down are things that have been remedied since they were reported, but because that's not a question, I could say that till the end.
Yes, please say that for your summary.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want a bit more time to come up with some questions, I can turn to members first and then come to you instead, if you'd like.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bell, any questions for the objectors?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on Mr. Goat. You commented that you would prefer the license to be rejected, but if we are minded to accept it with stronger conditions, and I wanted to ask you what those conditions you would think would be appropriate. So a little bit more detail there would be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Goat.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Bell. I think the issue that we're trying to establish, certainly in terms of this meeting, is are the conditions going to be clear, measurable and enforceable? And at the moment, I'm still yet to be persuaded that necessarily is the case. So that would be the criteria for me. That's what I'm looking for. If they can't be defined, then enforcement becomes extremely difficult and it just becomes subjective. So there has to be some objective indicator for me. Does that answer the question for you?
That's helpful, thank you. And the other question I had, which I kind of half wrote down, apologies, it was for Miss Edmonds. I'm mindful that we have had a response from the centre kind of setting out a number of conditions, and I just wanted to clarify whether you feel that those conditions, if enforced correctly, would be sufficient.
Well, we welcome the amendments, but they actually demonstrate that the original application lacked sufficient safeguards. And as other people have stated, more importantly, many of the safeguards remain too vague to enforce. Terms such as majority, larger events, limited duration, and sports focused remain undefined, and we can't tell what the licence would actually permit.
So I guess a follow-up question, if we were able to specify, if there were greater specificity to those conditions, would there be consideration?
Well, sorry.
No, just to kind of, I guess, that clarity of if we were to, by larger events, my understanding is that is of events for the site capacity of 2,000. If we were to kind of, as we've discussed, as has been proposed today, and we've kind of heard through, or are you still unconvinced that would be sufficient and appropriate?
It comes back to an issue of trust and compliance. We need to be persuaded that the site is capable of complying with the restrictions in an enforceable manner. And I'm afraid that to date, that hasn't been demonstrated.
Thank you for clarifying for me.
Any further questions, Councillor Bell? Okay, Councillor Amin, any questions from yourself?
Not many. I think I'm grateful to residents for the clarity they've provided about on their experience of what's happening at the moment at New River. But one thing I was quite curious about, I suppose, is that are there any specific events which have more noise than others, as it were? Because it feels like are they all the same? I just wondered a little if I could ask for a little bit more clarification about which events cause the most difficulties for you, or would you know even what event is going on? I wondered about that.
So, Councillor, can I ask which of the objectors is that?
I really
directed
don't mind. I'm not fussed.
Okay, well, I feel quite bad doing this. Mr. Goetz responded, Miss Edmonds responded. Miss Stewart, would you like to respond to that question? I'm sort of just choosing from the top three the speakers who spoke first. I'm sort of going through the first three. Apologies
I think
for picking you out there.
No, that's fine. Obviously, the 3-day festivals are incredibly intrusive because it's the entire weekend. So that means with no notice, because communication has been very poor from New River. So for an entire weekend, we have constant loud noise going on all day into the evening, 3 days in a row. So if I had to single out one, it would be the festival that is run every year. I guess different events have a different impact. So it would depend on the particular level of noise, the responsiveness, if anything, of the New River team, whether it's daytime, whether it's evening. I wouldn't want to characterize all of the events as having the same impact, but some of them are more impactful than others. They all have an impact.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, I'm sorry, Councillor, if I may jump in here, just a quick
Robert,
follow-up question.
I think Robert's got a response as well, so I just wondered whether he should come in.
Mr. Goat. You're muted, Mr. Goat.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for that. It's the reggae event that is absolutely thunderous. It really is. It's ground shattering in terms of the noise that it makes. The bass, which is penetrating.
So,
yeah.
apologies. So I've got a follow-up question to Miss Stewart. Apologies, Councillor. I mean, I'm going to jump in here just with a quick follow-up question. You mentioned the 3-day festival with no notice. Now, if we were minded to agree this licence, that 3 days would take 3 days out of the total of 5. But also, if we were to set a condition of that they have to provide notice 28 days in advance. This is one of the conditions that Ms. Crouch mentioned. So that would be an enforceable condition that the licensing subcommittee could set, say, you know, large events of this scale must be provided notice within 28 days. Would that alleviate your concerns? Because you mentioned about with no notice.
No, it wouldn't alleviate my concerns because we still have this question of, yes, we've got the 5 event days that is under this license. We have the question mark about how many other events are happening under external licenses. So that's one issue, is the question of it's not just 5, it will be many more than that. Also, the 2,000 people that attend the larger events, that has all the knock-on effects in terms of alcohol, transport, etc., the sort of wider public nuisance. But honestly, I'm not sure it makes any difference if there's 500 people there or 2,000 people there, if the music is at the same volume.
And it's cumulative.
Sorry, Ms. Connolly, could you please mute yourself?
Okay, sorry.
Councillor Amin, any more questions from yourself? Councillor Amin, you're on mute.
You muted me. I was trying to understand whether there was anything that the centre can do to reduce the kind of impact it's having at the moment. And I guess I was also trying to understand how much effort. I mean, Laura sounds like a new officer, so it's hard to hold her accountable for what's been going on in the past. But I just wondered also about the level of engagement in the past and whether, you know, by complaining and by asking for meetings and by talking to your councillors, etc., whether that made an impact, or did you feel that it just does not have an impact? None of it has had an impact, because he seems to me, you know, it feels like very, for Laura, it feels like very recent stuff rather than things in the past, which is obviously how much you've experienced it over time. So just wondered about that.
So, Councillor, I mean, who are you directing that question at, please?
Can I, Robert, maybe, or Liz? I don't mind, really. I'm not fussed.
Okay,
it's the
Mr.
same.
Goad.
Actually, could I just bump this over to Liz, because I think she's probably better briefed on this than I am to pick this up.
Okay, Miss Edmonds.
Okay.
You're on mute.
Sorry, Councillor, would you just mind summarising the question again?
I was just going to say, I know that Miss Crouch is new to the centre, so she's responding in a new officer fashion. You know, she doesn't have the history that you guys have with the centre in the same way. So I just wondered whether anything you've done in the past, any complaints you've made, any kind of representations you guys have made through your councillors or through anybody else for that matter, has made an impact. And if so, what made an impact? I'm just trying to get a feel for what can be made better.
Well, I think the short answer to that question is no, unfortunately. As I highlighted when I spoke, there are numerous issues with the ways residents can make complaints. It's extremely frustrating. And not only that, a lot, as I mentioned when I spoke, a lot of the events are at weekends when the Haringey Noise team is not available. So you're always, you know, by the time that is investigated, the moment has passed. If they were able to come at that time and experience the noise and maybe go to a resident's house and experience what they are having to deal with, I think that could possibly, well, that would demonstrate why we are complaining and why we are asking for this license to be refused. So no, I have to say I'm sorry. Okay. No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Amin, before I go back to Miss Crouch?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Crouch, any questions from yourself?
Thank you, and thank you, councillors. A lot of the questions you asked were things I was thinking about as we went through. I have two. They are general for everyone in the room, but I think maybe given the responses we've had, if I direct them to Mr. Goat, Ms. Stewart and Miss Edmonds, and I do apologise if you perhaps feel you're not the right people to answer on the group's behalf, but there were two questions. First one is, based on the themes and discussions here, I think our immediate engagement with you needs to be more formalised, long-term, licence or no licence, but our communication and connection with our residents needs to be better. I would propose a regular community meeting formally to you now. So this is my question, is would a formal residents community meeting where your councillors are also invited, would that be welcome? With a range of topics covered, an agenda that can be created collaboratively? That's question number one. Second question is, based on how we communicate the events, we talked earlier about using the events page on the website. We've also just clarified now that we can also use the application, so people who do have the application can get a push notification to say that there is an event. What we did talk about earlier was leafleting, and how that's not possible, but event notices being put up around the border and on a dedicated events board. Would you feel that that would be a better solution for the residents that aren't perhaps digitally enabled in the area?
Okay, so questions should be directed to individuals. Miss Alcott, I see your hand is up. Are you volunteering to respond to one of those two questions, or is it up for another matter?
I did want to make a point to a previous point when you asked about, if you could come back to me. I think I have two concrete answers that will be very helpful on how to manage and be successful.
Okay, I'll come back to you after these two questions then. So who's willing to answer? Question one is about regular residence meetings. Who wants to take that one? I need to direct it at someone, so someone's going to have to respond. Otherwise, I'm going to pick names, and people won't be too happy with that.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. I think Miss Crouch directed it to Mr. Goat, Miss Stewart.
Oh, apologies. So sorry about that, Mr. Goat. Over to you. Apologies. I thought I was trying to find volunteers, but Mr. Goat, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and Kate, and Liz, if you could jump in if there's anything that I'm missing here. So my instinct, Laura, for the meeting would be, well, it would be a start, but I think it probably is no more than that. There has been no prior discussion with the residents, as we know, for years, and in fact the polar opposite of that. People have just been strenuously avoided when it comes to people listening to them. So in the nicest possible way, you've got a lot of work to do, and I appreciate that this would be some form of reach out to perhaps address some of those concerns that people have, but I really can't say anything beyond that. I think it's probably just establishing terms of reference and agreeing some kind of consensus about how things can be managed going forward. Because I think we probably, as we're all trying to communicate, we understand it's a centre, it's a community centre, and we want to support it. So we do want to help people. In terms of the flyers, the posters, everything else like that, again, my concern is that's very reactive. It's very passive. It relies on people going past the sports centre to be able to see the notice. Frankly, if you don't get emails and you don't go past the sports centre, you won't have a clue of anything that's coming up. And as Mary pointed out, if she's invited some friends around and everything else like that, she will have to only find out at the last minute, literally when an event starts, that something like that is happening. So I think that needs a little bit more thought, if I'm honest, about how that is communicated to people. So that's my view. Chair, I don't know if we could invite any of the other two, Kate or Liz, to comment on that at all, if possible, please.
Kate, I'll come to you. Miss Stewart, sorry, apologies.
Thank you. So of course, you know, more dialogue, engaging with the centre. I wouldn't object to that in the slightest. I think it's a positive way forward. However, again, this is premised on the lack of existing trust. So I, for many weeks, was going down to the centre to ask for volume to be turned down, expressing concerns, not just of myself, but my neighbours as well. So I was going there, I made it clear I was going there on behalf of members of the community. And then on the 12th of May, I met with two of the management team. I went in again to complain, and they invited me in to have a conversation. That felt like a really positive conversation. So they expressed their upset, their distress about how the impact the noise was having on the local community. Let's do something about it. We'll work together. They said all the right things. And then within days, there was another event at just the same volume. So engagement is important. I would welcome it, but we're starting from a basis where there is very little trust in the management following through. So we have tried this, more than happy to try again, but it's a challenge.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Alcott, you had a point you wanted to make. If you could make that really brief so that we can move on to summations, please.
You asked which events were particularly disturbing, and the answer is it's all events that particularly have the long wave, low bass frequencies. So that includes the reggae, and it includes the tannoy. So it's every event, and it's the low bass ones that are penetrating the houses, penetrating the bodies, and are so upsetting to people. If we could, what is monitored is managed. And right now we're only looking at the decibel volume. That's the only thing that's being monitored. Please, please, could Mr. Bellringer come up with a way to monitor the decibels and the long wave, low frequency bass. And if we can get that down, and testing inside residents' homes to make sure we've got it at appropriate level, then we know we're good. We can monitor it. We know it's not coming in because it's hit that level. So it's two parts. We need to monitor the decibels. 75 is too high. I should be able to have a conversation in my backyard. And we need to monitor, to record it, measure it, and then monitor the decibels and find the appropriate level for that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the summation we're going to move on to the summation section of the hearing. We'll first come to the objectors. I will do it in the same order that we took you in originally. And then at last we'll have a summation from the applicant. With that in mind, I call Liz, sorry, my brain, Liz Edmonds, apologies. Liz Edmonds to make her summation. You also have no more than 5 minutes. If we can try and keep it below that, I'd be a very happy chair. For all speakers, I mean.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have anything to add. I put everything that I wanted to say into my representation. I think I've made my points very clearly. I have nothing further to add. So I rest my case, as it were, from what I have already said.
Thank you very much. Robert Goat.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, similar to Liz, not much more to add really, but I mean, for me, I suppose really, if you were to think of a worse place to actually invite 2,000 people, I cannot imagine anything worse than currently what is at the moment. This place has a reputation for not listening to the residents. It has limited parking. It has so much of an impact on the local school, the nursery school that's nearby. It's got a history of ignoring the noise complaints from the residents. Everything about it just looks like the wrong place to do that. And I think also, as I pointed out, when you take into the mix that the school opposite also has a 10 license as well and can run concurrent noise events, which there was one at the weekend and that was complained about, I know, then you can imagine the impact on the local community. So I would urge the committee to refuse this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kate Stewart.
If it's okay, I'll just read out the last sentence of my submission again. This sums it up for me. In sum, the Licensing Act requires licence holders to take active steps to promote licensing objectives. Based on the evidence before the committee, I do not believe that the applicant has demonstrated that they can be relied upon to do so consistently in relation to the prevention of public nuisance.
Thank you. Councillor Des Nevis.
Thank you. I'll just say three things, Chair and Committee. One is I'll remind you all that I've had a very broad amount of feedback from a lot of different parts of our community who are feeling impacted and concerned by this issue. I would also say that this is about health and well-being and how we look to run a service in the council that builds on, supports, develops local people's well-being and doesn't take away from it. And I'd add one other thing, which is in response to questions about engagement, I think it's deeply disappointing as a ward councillor to not have been engaged in the journey. Certainly other services and things that have developed in the ward have done so. And I think it's deeply disappointing not to be part of the story and journey of making what's a valued resource in the community a success. And being part of that journey is a really important part of, in my view, how the centre can go forward and continue to develop and be there for the long term.
Thank you. Robin Alcott.
I'd just like to reiterate that we need to get the current management of what bare minimums need to be met before we can ever consider expanding the brief. I look forward to them being met, but this needs to happen first, and I urge the committee to reject this at this time.
Thank you. Mark Garner, thank you.
Not much to add, but I appreciate Laura's been sort of thrown under the bus in difficult situations, taking over this role. But we're at a point we need to build community's trust before we can go any further with this licensing request. Bluntly, you know, it's forgotten the community. We haven't been involved, but I really appreciate everyone engaging in this. But it can't be this is the end of that engagement. This has to be the start, and we have to rebuild. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Connolly.
Well, I object to the proposals, but I think that New River could offer a lot to the community. I feel it's very male dominated. I think, you know, there could be art classes for retired people. You could hire it out. You could have farmers markets, things like that, but not really amplified music. This area doesn't need that. It's already a very noisy area, and this just, it's just would be terrible. And I don't have any trust in the situation because of my previous experience of on various occasions, on at least 4 occasions, I tried to ring the council about the noise and I couldn't get through. There was nobody there. One occasion I did get through.
Thank you. Sarah Gornall.
I have nothing further to add, but thanks for the care with which you're considering the application.
Thank you very much. And that's the summation for the objectors. We now come to the summation for the applicant. Laura Crouch.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for your representations. It's very heartening to see a community that passionate about its environment and actively coming together to let us know what it is it wants and needs. Based on what I said previously and then was then advised to save it till now, just to let you know, the hole in the fence has been fixed. It was fixed on Friday. We received photos from the FM team that it was done. So that was completed. In terms of my summary, I'm really, really happy to see the engagement, and I really want to harness the community more. Subject to the license being granted or not, one of my biggest takeaways from this is that you guys really, really want to be involved. So I'm going to work with you to create a residents community communication group of some sort. I'd really like to engage you in the terms of reference and the people that should be invited to that. I will start actioning that this week. No matter what happens, my priority is making sure we have good community engagement. And in reference to using the facilities for more things that are more holistic in wellbeing, art and crafts, knit and natter, coffee mornings, these are all things under consideration right now in terms of how we can utilise our space to bring more people into our environment. So thank you, Ms. Connolly, for pointing that out as well and giving me an opportunity to share that. In terms of the application for members and the chair and our residents, it is not, we're not applying for us to be a festival venue operating every weekend. It's for a community sports centre seeking flexibility to host up to 5 larger, regulated, tightly regulated events, which we will have much more control over as the licensee holders directly. We've had extensive discussions with police and environmental health and the applicant. So in terms of us, we have accepted all requested conditions, including reduced hours, strengthened controls, other mitigations around security, checking CCTV, traffic, noise management plans, noise monitoring, and a immediate reaction to your to any concerns on the day in the moment with a dedicated phone number, which, if this license goes through, we will make sure that you get and is well advertised. The other part of this is we are committing to find new ways of being able to communicate with the wide residents about our events and that 28-day notice period. So Mr. Goat, thank you for your ideas and kind of feedback on that. We can take that back and see what else we can do beyond the digital to make sure we meet more people. Again, in terms of the actual licence, the 2 responsible authorities with statutory expertise with crime, disorder, nuisance and public safety withdrew their objections and agreed that our mitigations were okay. So we respectfully and with due care and attention to the time that the residents have put into this and our members, we submit the application subject to the agreed conditions and with promoting the licensing objectives and therefore should be granted.
Thank you very much. Apologies. Thank you very much, Ms. Crouch, for that. The subcommittee will now deliberate on the licence application, and our decision will be provided within 5 working days of this meeting. Can I ask the subcommittee members to join me in the deliberation room? In the meantime, thank you everyone for your time this evening and your contributions, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.